Daniel chapter 8. This chapter is going to be similar to chapter 7. It's another vision of Daniel's, dealing with the same nations as we dealt with last week in chapter 7 and also in chapter 2 with Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Except for Babylon this time. We're not going to deal with Babylon. It's going to be mostly beginning with the Medes and Persians after that. So again, we're in a section of Daniel that is so exact in the prophecies that he gave. For us, most of this is history already. And you can look it up in secular history. Even the things that are even symbolic in his dream, like in chapter 8, we're going to see a goat, we're going to see a ram. And those things were, if you look back in the history of those nations, in the history of Greece, in the history of the Medes and Persians, those were symbols of their nation. In fact, symbols that were given to them by Babylon when Babylon was in power. So just keep that in mind. Again, we're going through, it's going to be very similar, but a little more detailed even yet. This is one of the things that makes critics try to say that this book could not have been written in Daniel's time, had been written much later afterward because it's way too exact. Well, we already know, again, by the grammar structure that it was written in Daniel's time. Not just because of the languages that it was written in, but because of the way they were structured, because sometime after that, a couple hundred years after Daniel, they changed the way the grammar was structured in their writing. So we have that in favor. Not only that, we have found copies of Daniel that predated what the critics thought had to be the time it was actually written in. So they don't have much of a leg to stand on right now. Well, not that they would admit that, but that kind of goes across anything that disagrees with the Bible. Anyhow, let's get right on a rant right out of the box, huh? Daniel chapter 8 says, in the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel, after the one that appeared to me the first time. I saw in the vision, and it so happened while I was looking that I was in Shushan, the citadel, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in the vision that I was by the river Ulai. Then I lifted my eyes, and I saw there, standing beside the river, was a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher one came up last. And I saw the ram pushing westward, northward, and southward, so that no animal could withstand him, nor was there any that could deliver from his hand. But he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between its eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. He was moving with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him. And there was no one that could deliver the ram from his hand. Therefore the male goat grew very great. But when he became strong, the large horn was broken, and in place of it, 4 notable ones came up toward the 4 winds of the heaven. And out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. And it grew up to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host and some of the stars to the ground and trampled them. He even exalted himself as high as the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifices were taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Because of transgression, an army was given over to the horn to oppose daily sacrifices, and he cast truth down to the ground. He did all this and prospered. Then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to that certain one who was speaking, "How long will this vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot. And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary shall be cleansed. All right, so a lot of symbolism here, and we're not going to waste a lot of time going through it right now, because immediately after this you have the interpretation. That's one of the nice things about these very specific prophecies of Daniel. There's not a lot left to the imagination, because right away he's given the interpretation of the dream. He just asks. And I'm going to point out here, first of all, Daniel spends a lot of time in prayer. We already know that. We go back to the story of Darius and Daniel in the lion's den, which at this point chronologically hasn't happened, but we've already seen the story, and that was all they could get Daniel for. When they tried to make laws, they tried to establish an authority and trip Daniel up so that he could not be so highly elevated in the nation. They went after him for his worship of God, and that's where they got him. And he ended up obviously in the lion's den. But again, a man of prayer, a man who's in constant communication and has favor with God, is delivered from that situation. Daniel's delivered from a lot of situations, and we've seen that in the early stories of the book. Daniel then is given, because of his faithfulness, he's given words to say to the people, and things to be written and maintained and until our time, so that we can see. These things were written not just for him, but for us. This should be great encouragement to us, first of all, that our God would make prophecy so exact that our faith would grow strong. I'm going to tell you, you're not going to probably convert anybody by reading them these prophecies, because I've tried it. Don't work. They still don't understand. I can point here and say, even with the interpretation right here that's going to start in verse 15, and you can go into Isaiah and see that Isaiah prophesied of Cyrus, and when that was shown to him by Daniel as he came in and conquered Babylon, Cyrus didn't, just annihilate the place, and he found favor, or the Jews found favor with Cyrus. And Cyrus would be the one who would give the command to go back and restore and rebuild Jerusalem. And Alexander the Great was shown this prophecy of him, because we're going to get to the goat here. That is speaking of Alexander the Great. And so specific that, it goes from the direction that he came to conquer the world. And when it says that goat went and came over the whole face of the earth without touching the earth, it's just speaking of the speed with which he conquered the world. At 32 years old, nothing left to conquer. At 32 years old. Started at 20. At 20. I don't know what you all accomplished it between 20 and 30, but I don't feel like it was much for me. Not compared to Alexander the Great by any stretch of the imagination. I'm 50 years old. I don't feel like I've conquered much of anything compared to him. But anyways, it picks up the direction that he went in. So anyways, Daniel's given these things, these instructions, this wisdom. Daniel, though, doesn't even understand this. We saw last week is the end, chapter 7. Says, this is the end of the account. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me, and my countenance changed, but I kept the matter in my own heart. And I believe he even asked for the interpretation in that one. And he was concerned with the little horn. And we're going to see the little horn again today. That has a dual fulfillment with it. It's already been fulfilled once, but this prophecy of that little horn coming up out of the Greek, or out of the Roman Empire, is going to be fulfilled a second time in the Antichrist, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But anyhow, all that to say, you guys, prayer is key. Prayer is central. Being in communication with God. I know I've been beating this, and I'm going to continue to beat this drum. It is essential in your life. And if you don't feel any more desperation now in the day that we live in, with the ridiculousness that we see on the news, to be in communication with God Almighty, then you have some other problems. What you see going on around you, whether it's local or whether it's world or whether it's national, whatever you're keyed in on, whatever you're looking at, that may cause, and it should cause disturbance in you, should drive you to your knees. I would say to your knees before you go to a political gathering of any kind, to your knees before you go to the voting booth, to your knees before anything, before you make a decision concerning your children, before you make a decision concerning school or jobs. At this point, at this time, investments, anything, you need to be on your knees before the Lord now. This is the way the church will wake up and be revived. It's going to start with prayer. It's going to start with us. Our nation has no chance of recovery at all. If the Lord tarries, if he doesn't come back very soon, if he's got another 100 years, our nation has no chance of recovery and being great again without the church first confessing their sin and waking up and reviving, and then he'll heal the land. We don't have a chance of that. Now, even if the church is revived, doesn't mean that we won't be persecuted. It doesn't mean the nation's going to be great again. But that doesn't matter. What matters is the church wakes up and is ready for him to come back. And I think we're getting the wake-up call. I think when Jesus talked about gave the parable of the 10 virgins, and 5 were foolish and weren't ready, and 5 were ready, but they were all sleeping. All of them had to be woke up. The church needs to wake up and be ready. It's time to wake up because it's almost time for the wedding feast. All right. So let's get at this. We have the ram, and the ram was symbolic of the Medes and the Persians. Babylon had set that actually on them. They set symbols for their areas according to the zodiac. If you know what the zodiac is, that's if you read the horoscopes, you shouldn't be, but if you know what the horoscopes and all that, it's based on what sign you were born under. Well, they set those symbols also over the areas that they had. And so the Medo-Persian area was set over, or had, let's see if I can remember I don't remember the names now, but anyways, had the ram. And then the Macedonia, which was where the Greek Empire would come from, had the goat, the one-horned goat, I think it's Capricorn, set over it. So these were already set in place by the at this point ruling empire. Remember, this is the 3rd year of Belshazzar, so you're still in the Babylonian time. This is decades before the Medes and Persians really come to power. Now, we've said before that you could probably look and see that they were gaining in power, but who knows how obvious it really was. Daniel may have been privy to it because he was so high in rank within the government that he would maybe be doing dealings for the king and doing business for the king, and so then he may have had a clue as to how powerful the Medes and Persians were becoming. But Greece was not on the chart anywhere to be the next world power after the Medes and Persians. There's no way. This is 200 years they come into power, 200 years after Daniel. So that's what we're looking at here. The 2 horns on the ram, they said they were high. One was higher, and that speaks of the Persian part of the empire. You had the Medes raised up first, the Persians came up second, and they joined together, but the Persians were the stronger of the alliance than the Medes. So the ram came from westward, northward, and southward. Notice he doesn't go eastward. He doesn't have there were no major battles to the east. It doesn't mean they didn't do any battles or didn't do any conquering. It just was nothing big. But there were big wars to the north and the west and the south for the Persians to have to win. And so that speaks very much, and this is the direction and the order of the direction that they went first. So this is, again, still decades at least before they do this. But this is the order that they went in from the west and then pushed north and then pushed southward. It's the order that they did their battles in. So then Daniel says in verse 5, when I was considering, suddenly a male goat came from the west. And then again, we just talked about that. Alexander the Great comes from the west and comes across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, speaking of the speed with which he conquered. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes, so he had the one horn speaks of his power, which was Alexander the Great, the leader. So then he came at the ram and had two horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. Now, when the Medes and Persians conquered Macedonia, they were extremely cruel to them. And so when it says that this goat rises up and he runs fast and furious with great fury and anger toward the ram, that's why. They hated the Medes and Persians because of what they had done to them and to their land. And in that time of being under their rule, they never forgot how they were conquered with the great cruelty that the Medes and Persians brought. So that's kind of the specific there of coming with such anger and violence toward the Medes and Persians and trampled them into the ground. And then so therefore the male goat grew very, very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken off. So Alexander the Great, at his prime, what we say the prime of life, and obviously at the prime of his power, he's overcome the entirety of the known world at that time. He's conquered the known world. At 32 years old, he's lamenting that there's nothing left to do. He's crying because there's no more wars to fight. There's no more battle to win. He has done it all already. At 32, there's nothing left in his mind for his life. And in a drunken stupor ends up outside in the rain and the cold and gets pneumonia, and that's how he dies at 32 years old. Now, it said that when he was asked to whom the kingdom should go, he said, give it to the strong. So you end up giving it out to 4 generals who took the place of Alexander the Great. Let's see if I can find their names here. So you had Cassandra. He ended up with Greece and Europe. I'm going to murder this name. Lysimachus. Anyways, he ended up with Asia Minor. Seleucid ended up with Israel and its region, and Ptolemy ended up with Egypt. And so then in verse 9, where you say out of one of them came a little horn which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. That's the Seleucid dynasty of that. And anyhow, that's how he came into power there. So let's get to the interpretation of this by God. In verse 15, it says, it happened when I, Daniel, had seen the vision and was seeking the meaning, that suddenly there stood before me one having the appearance of a man. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of the Ulai, who called and said, Gabriel, make this man understand the vision. So he came near where I stood, and when he came near, I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said to me, understand, son of man, that the vision refers to the time of the end. Now, as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep, with my face to the ground, but he touched me and stood me upright. And he said, look, I am making known to you what shall happen in the latter time of the indignation. For at the appointed time, the end shall be. The ram which you saw, having 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia. And the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between his eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn, and the 4 that stood up in his place, the four kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understands sinister schemes. His power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy fearfully, and shall prosper and thrive. He shall destroy the mighty and also the holy people. Through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without human means. The vision of the evening and mornings, which was told, is true. Therefore seal up the vision, for it refers to many days in the future. And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick for days. Afterward I arose and went about the king's business. I was astonished by the vision, but no one understood it. All right, so we have, again, we've already kind of covered some of this stuff, right? He tells them who the kingdoms are, that it's going to be the Medes and Persians, and that it's going to be Greece, and that the one horn's going to break off, and you're going to have the four. We want to talk about the little horn for a minute. It's easy to look at that and say, all right, the little horn, and we've already kind of established this in earlier chapters, little horn is the Antichrist, and he's going to talk about all the different things that he's going to do in the temple, defiling the temple, and all these things that are to come. We know that's going to happen. It's referenced, and we've gone through it when we were in 2 Thessalonians. We've already gone through it in Daniel. We went through it in Revelation. And it's mentioned, he's mentioned in all those areas. So we know it's him, but there has already been one fulfillment of this too. There's already been a man who's been raised up, who's been the type of Antichrist, the ultimate type of Antichrist. Right? You can say that there have been many that have been types of Antichrist. People have talked about Napoleon, talked about Hitler, and even President Obama. There's all kinds of people that people have mentioned that they think could be or was or had the spirit of Antichrist. Well, there are many people, I believe, great and small, who have operated in the same spirit of Antichrist. And John even said in one of his epistles that the spirit of Antichrist was already alive then, already active then in his time. All right, so if you go back to the epistles of John, he talks about that. The attitude of Antichrist, to be the world power, to be the man, to be the one between men and God, has been alive for a long time. Not to be the one between men and God in a righteous way, but the one to be between men and God is to be putting down God and controlling men. That has been from the garden. Okay? That has been from Cain. To have the attitude of, I don't need to do what God tells me to do. I can worship him however I want to worship him, and you better receive my offering. To when he doesn't receive it and he receives his brother, he goes and he kills his brother. You have a type of the Antichrist right out of the box. It has been alive. It has been the force against God from the beginning. You can take it back to the garden with Satan. He used his cunning, he used his lies, he used his deception to trick Eve, and then Adam chooses her over God. Right? So it's not really anything new. But nobody, in my understanding, has fulfilled it so specifically as Antiochus Epiphanes, or Antiochus IV, or Antiochus Epimanes, however you want to refer to him. Epiphanes means illuminated or divine. And so he called himself that. Antiochus is because of the area that he came from. He came from Antioch. But which is, ironic because the first group of people to be called Christians came from Antioch too. But he calls himself Antiochus Epiphanes. He thinks he's God. But then the Jews thought he was such a crazy person that they called him Epimanes, which means madman. Antiochus the madman. So, but that's where he comes from. This is the little horn that's going to come up. He comes out of the Seleucid dynasty or rule, that general. He was extremely, extremely cruel. And, we see here it says that his countenance was hard, or as for the broken horn and the four that stood up, and the four kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. So none of the four are going to be as strong as Alexander. And in the latter times of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached the fullness, a king shall arise, having fierce features, who understood sinister schemes. So I'm just going to kind of give you a little history on this guy and what all he did. I'm going to try to do it without following my notes because here we go. He tried, and actually he's responsible for Greek becoming the language of the day, and he brought about a simplified Greek, or Koine Greek we call it. It was a common Greek. The artists and the story writers and all of them used classical Greek to write, but the voice on the street, the people on the street used this Koine Greek. He was responsible for bringing that throughout the whole kingdom and making that the language of the day for everybody. He was very much into trying to bring the Greek culture and force that on everybody that was conquered, all of the kingdom. The problem was he ran into the Jews, and they weren't having any of it. They were not going to lose their identity. They were not going to lose their language. They were not going to lose their form of worship. When Alexander the Great came into Jerusalem to conquer Jerusalem, before he came in, he had had a vision, and it's in, Josephus records this in his writings. He had had a vision in Macedonia of a man coming out looking like God, gold and purple and all, and many before him clothed in white. Well, when Alexander the Great was coming, the high priest got everybody around in Jerusalem, all the Levites, dressed them in white, and sent them out on the road before Alexander the Great came out. And so when he approached, he was coming up between these rows of the Levites, all dressed in white. It's part of his dream. And when he gets there, the high priest is standing there in all of his garb with the scrolls. And he shows Alexander the Great, this is what's going to happen. This is God, this is talking about you. This is how you have conquered the world. This was written 200 years before you're even born. This is about you specifically. So impressed and so overwhelmed, both because of his dream and because of what the high priest says and shows him, he, one, bows before the high priest, which upsets the generals. What are you doing? You don't go anywhere and give anybody any mercy. You don't show any kind of respect to anybody. What's wrong with you? You're the conqueror. And he said, I wasn't bowing before them. I was bowing before their God. And he would go and he would spend some days with the high priest and with the others and learn. And so impressed is he by these guys that he gives them everything they want, basically. They tell him, we want to maintain our worship, our form of worship. We were already been in captivity because of this. We're going to maintain our worship. Alexander said, fine, maintain your worship. He said, not only can you maintain your worship, but anybody who will join my army and go fight, I guarantee they also will be able to maintain their feast days and their worship, even in my army. And he took care of the Jews. They had his favor. But now this guy has come along in the end. He wants to just make everybody one culture. And the Jews are going to resist that. Now, we don't have the Maccabees in our Bible. If you have a Catholic Bible, you'd have them. And while they're part of the Apocrypha, they're not scripture, but they are full of some historical facts. And it talks about the Maccabees. It talks about the wars of the Maccabees. And Antiochus is going to end up killing one of the high priests, and his sons then go to war with him. And you have these 5 sons that take on guerrilla tactics that are beating back Antiochus. He can't do anything to conquer them. Finally, he comes in, and I don't know that this was, like I said, I've looked at so many different things about this and lost a little bit of the chronology here, but I don't know if it was when he killed the high priest or if it was after that point, but he comes into Jerusalem. He goes into the temple. He sets up a statue of Zeus in the temple. And I think this is what finally just inspires a great revolt. Sets up the thing of Zeus in the temple, and he sets up a statue of himself. And he sacrifices to the statues. He sacrifices a hog in the temple, defiling the temple. He didn't just sacrifice the hog in the temple. He takes the blood and the juices from the hog and he throws it all around the temple. So now, obviously, you have a huge revolt on your hands at that point. So then you have the prophecy here of the days. How long? Verse 13. It says, how long will the vision be concerning the daily sacrifices and the transgression of desolation, the giving of both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, for 2,300 days, then the sanctuary will be cleansed. So obviously now the sanctuary has been defiled. You can't sacrifice in the sanctuary. But now because of the revolt, you're going to not also be. Right? So there's been a lot of things that have come out of this 2,300 days, even in our time. Many have tried to use that to calculate the time of Jesus' return. Out of that kind of teaching, the Millerites came, and we have the Seventh-day Adventists using this number to try to calculate when Jesus would come back. And they all went up on a hill for a certain amount of time, thinking a certain day he was going to come back, and he didn't come back. And then it was, he did come back, just spiritually, not physically, and all that mess. The Jehovah's Witnesses also kind of come out of this whole time and place. Out of the Millerites come the Jehovah's Witnesses, come the Seventh-day Adventists, their leaders and such. Ellen G. White was part of all of that. Harold Camping tried to use the number to decide and calculate the day that Jesus would come back. And I don't know how many times he was wrong. I didn't even really know about him until a couple of years ago when he was touting it, but evidently in the 80s he predicted it, and in the 90s he predicted it, and every time he's predicted it, he's been completely wrong. And now we're all still here, and he's gone, and, it is what it is. And then there was another guy who wrote a book, 88 Reasons Why Jesus Will Come Back in 88 Days, or in 88, something like that, who had to change his book to 89 Reasons Why He'll Come Back in 89, and then I think he just lost interest in the whole thing. I don't know. But, there are a lot of things that people try to take this number and calculate and try to apply it to the return of Jesus. It wasn't that. The closest thing that we can come to is that probably from the day that the priest was murdered to the day that the temple was actually able to be cleansed, it was 2,300 days. It was that long. And that's what it's, and not only that, on the cleansing time, they go in to cleanse the temple, and they come to the priest and they tell him, hey, the oil has to burn for 8 days. It takes 8 days to cleanse the temple, to dedicate the temple. And we've only got enough oil left for 1 day. So we're just going to pray. I mean, it shouldn't have overcome the Greeks anyways, right? But we'll pray. And the oil was maintained by God miraculously for 8 days. That's where we get Hanukkah from. It's where in John, I believe chapter 10, it says Jesus went to Jerusalem for the Feast of Dedication. That's what it's about. That was Hanukkah. So Feast of Lights, Feast of Dedication, that's Hanukkah. So Jesus went and observed and acknowledged that feast. But that's where all of that comes from, is from Antiochus. Now we know, if you go to Matthew chapter 24, Jesus also speaks of this. He's talking about the end. He's predicting the destruction of the temple, the sign of the ends of the time, both of his return and his return for the church. I think you can find both in this dissertation here in Matthew. He doesn't speak of everything chronologically, but he does speak of everything. But he gets to this point here in verse 15. He says, therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him who is on the housetop go down to take anything out, or not go down to take anything out of his house. Let him who is in the field not go back and get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. For then there will be great tribulation, such has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. Right? And he goes on to warn about false Christs and false things. But he's talking there about the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel. Number one, if anybody tries to tell you that we can't trust Daniel or that it was Jesus acknowledges Daniel. And so to deny Daniel is to deny Jesus. And that is anybody who is denying the message of the Bible is denying God. We just went through this in 1 Samuel last week. Samuel's lamenting because the people want a king. We want a king like everybody else to rule over us and judge us. And Daniel is like, what are you doing? And his heart is broken. And he's angry with the people. And God says to him, listen, they're not rejecting you. Don't take this so personally. They're not rejecting you. They're rejecting me. They don't want me to rule and reign over them anymore. And Jesus would tell us in John, don't be surprised when they hate you. They hated me first. They hate you because they hate me. And it's the same today. Guys, we should not be, that goes through all the generations. And again, we could go right back to Cain and Abel, can't we? Cain wasn't rejecting his brother. He murdered his brother because his brother honored God. And it made him look bad. And he didn't want to be accountable the same way that Abel was willing to be accountable. And it's the same today. Right? So don't be surprised at the anger toward Christians. Don't be surprised that, in some countries it's a death sentence. In our country, they're just trying to legislate it out. It just whatever they want. They can't overcome God, and that just makes them more mad. But don't take it so personally. If we take it personally, we'll just be filled with anger, and we'll want to defend, and we'll want to retaliate. But if we don't take it personally, if we go, they're rejecting God, then our heart can be softened for them. Then our heart can be broken for those who are against God. And we can pray for them. And we can speak to them still. And we can try to reason with their insanity. But we won't just hole up somewhere and not reach out anymore. Because we're determined to honor our God who's given us the command to go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature and make disciples everywhere we go. We can do that if we don't take this personally. Antichrist is going to do the very same thing. 3.5 years, he's going to set up his own statue in the temple. He's going to defile the temple. He's going to put an end to the sacrifices. I believe there'll be sacrifices at least starting with the rebuilding of he will start with the rebuilding of the temple. And if that happens in the first 3.5 years, that's when it'll start. The temple has to be rebuilt. Sacrifices will begin again. There has to be a temple to defile. I would not be surprised to find out not only is he going to require the worship of himself, but that he will again defile the tabernacle or the temple the same way that Antiochus did and sacrifice an unclean animal. So, again, Antiochus fulfills that prophecy very specifically to be a mirror image or a picture of what's yet to come in the end. Now, in Jesus' words here, well, actually, Matthew puts this in here. It's not in red. It says, whoever reads, let him understand. And when John writes Revelation, there's a time, at least once that I remember, that they want whoever reads it. Well, there's a blessing, isn't it, at the beginning of the book for those who read this and understand this prophecy. But in Daniel writes at the time of the end. He says, seal that book up. Seal it up because it's about the end. And Daniel even said, I still didn't understand. Right? This is the end of the account in verse 28. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly troubled me and my countenance changed. Oh, I'm sorry, that's chapter 7. Chapter, it was still the same thing. And then I, Daniel, 27, and I, Daniel, fainted and was sick for days. Afterward I arose and went about the king's business. I was astonished by the vision, but no one understood it. It's like, I mean, he's given the interpretation. Now for us on this side of all that history, because it's history to us, we're looking back and going, wow. Look how specific God was. That he would love us, not to prove to us who he is. I don't think the believer looks at this and say, oh, you know what? I'm so glad I made the right decision. Now I know for sure. I don't, but I know from this that I should never doubt anything else that's left to happen. That God says what he means and he means what he says. There's no doubt. It builds my faith. It makes it stronger. But I wasn't converted because of this. And like I said, I've tried. People who want reasons. People who, how do you know? You take them to this and go, look, this is a matter of history, but it was written hundreds of years before it happened. And it's history to us. And you go, you know, I just don't know that I can. I don't. They still don't even know how you can believe the Bible's true. You know, but that should be heartbreaking. That should make us sick. It made Daniel sick. To look at this and go, and be so troubled. Because what's coming with this is a lot of death. What's coming with this is a lot of destruction. A lot of deceit. Sin rampant, covering the whole earth to look like it's in control. And even to know that it's only temporary. You know, all he's got to do is remember chapter 7. And the setting up of the great kingdom in the Ancient of Days. And he knows that's all coming. But before that happens, just an insane way of processing things, an insane way of treating people. It's all coming. And guys, I can tell you right now, it's here now. We've not seen. We've seen some of it in short blurps and short, happenings. And yes, there have been some horrendous things all throughout history. And we can look back to this. We can look back to the establishment of Europe and some of the things that the Romans were horrid as far as the way that they treated people and conquered people. And even in our own country's history, we don't have that great shining, example of wonderful people that we think we are. There were a lot of massacres here. A lot of horrible ways of treating people here. And a lot of racism and a lot of everything else. And it's all being brought back up. We've had great times of revival. And I think that happens, guys, when again, the church falls to their face and says, forgive me of my sin. And we're going to see that with Daniel in chapter 9. That's how it starts off. He's praying, asking God to forgive him of his sin and the sin of his nation. And honestly, I think there's too many Christians right now that just want the judgment to come. That we don't really pray for the sin of our nation, to ask God to forgive us as a nation. We pray for the judgment on those who are inciting the insanity. We want the division to come. I hear too many people praying like that. I've prayed like that. And, sometimes you get that example from David. You go into the Psalms. Lord, bash out their teeth, break their arms. Don't let them have any heritage beyond this. Take them out. Wipe their name off the face of the earth. I feel like that some days. And you know what? I think it's okay to pour your heart out that way. Just be ready for God to deal with you when you do. Because he does. So, all right, you ready to be like one of my kids now? Let's pray with grace and mercy. Let's talk about that. Remember all that you have And remember what's going to happen to them. It's not just the death that they experience here. It's what they experience after that. Where will they be? Are they going to be with you and me, or are they going to be separated from you and me? If they die in their sin today, they're separated from you and me. We need to tell them. We need to make sure we're living correctly. We have the right frame of mind. We're not giving in to the insanity in the name of revenge. When we think about these things, our hearts should be broken for the people around us, great and small. We shouldn't go reading into Revelation or even the prophecies of Daniel or anybody else thinking that we're going to go and get a thrill out of reading a horror story. Because I think that's some of the attitude too, to go in there and read, or to go in with the military mind of thinking, oh, look at a great conqueror. Look at all these people. They're all going to be dead. They're all going to be slaughtered. It's all these great battles, and they're all won by God. And it's not what he wants right now. We have this age of grace. We have this time of grace right now. We want to see the enemy beaten back. But not beaten back just in the form of people being beaten back. We want to win the spiritual battles, and the only way to win that is to be on our knees. We want the enemy beaten back so they hear, so they see. Again, I'll challenge you, if you go into the Psalms of David, you see a maturity and a cycling in his prayers. Out of frustration, he prays, the frustrated prayers. Lord, beat them back, take them out, all that. To, all right, Lord, check me and see what's wrong with me. To worship of God. And it's not my enemies anymore. Now it's his enemies, and his enemies will be defeated by his hand and not by mine. And that's the attitude we got to keep bringing ourselves around to. But again, you're not going to do that if you don't stay on your knees before God. If you don't ask every day for the Holy Spirit to just fill you every day. I get you get the Holy Spirit at salvation. He never leaves. Sealed. You've got it. But Paul tells Timothy, be being filled with the Spirit. Continually, every day, keep being filled with the Spirit until it's running over. There's an attitude of, Lord, give me more, pour out more on me. Lord, revive me with your Spirit. Build me up. It's not as though the Spirit is left. It's just that we have poured it out, hopefully. And we need more. And we want more of him. And we want the things given to us that are needful, whether it is for spiritual battle in the armor of God, or whether it is spiritual gifts to do the ministry of God, or whether it's the fruit of the Spirit to be the example of God. All of that. We're not to want one thing. We want to want it all. It shouldn't be satisfying enough for us to have one of the fruits of the Spirit. We want it all. We're not supposed to be like little kids picking out of the fruit salad which one we like and leaving the left behind for everybody else. Take it all. If you look at the list of the fruits of the Spirit and you see yourself lacking in some area, then ask God to give it to you, whatever it takes. You see ministry needs to be done, ask God to give you the gift and the wisdom and the knowledge to be able to do that ministry. You think he's calling you into something, but you don't know if you can do it? Get on your knees and ask him to fill you with the Spirit and enable you to do what he's calling you to do. Listen, if we'll do those things, we'll find ourselves in the same posture of Daniel in chapter 9, I believe. This is in the first year of Darius, the son of Ahasuerus, of the lineage of the Medes, who was made king over the realm of the Chaldeans in the first year of his reign. I, Daniel, understood by the books the number of the years specified by the word, or by the word of the Lord through Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in desolation of Jerusalem. Then I set my face toward the Lord God to make request by prayer and supplication with fasting, sackcloth and ashes, and I prayed to the Lord my God and made confession and said, My, O Lord, great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant and mercy with those who love him and with those who keep his commandments. We have sinned and committed iniquity. We have done wickedly and rebelled, even by departing from your precepts and your judgments. Neither have we heeded your servants, the prophets, who spoke in your name to our kings and our princes, to our fathers and all the people of the land. O Lord, righteousness belongs to you, but to us shame of face, as it is this day. To the men of Judah, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and all Israel, those near and those far off in all the countries to which you have driven them, because of the unfaithfulness which they have committed against you. O Lord, to us belongs shame of face, to our kings, our princes, and our fathers, because we have sinned against you. To the Lord our God belongs mercy and forgiveness, though we have rebelled against him. We have not obeyed the voice of the Lord our God to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants the prophets. Yes, all Israel has transgressed your law and has departed so as not to obey your voice. Therefore, the curse and the oath written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, have been poured out on us because we have sinned against him. And he has confirmed his words, which he spoke against us and against our judges who judged us, to bring upon us the great disaster. For under the whole heaven such has never been done as what has been done to Jerusalem. As it is written in the law of Moses, all this disaster has come upon us, yet we have not made our prayer before the Lord our God, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand your truth. Therefore the Lord has kept the disaster in mind and brought it upon us. For the Lord our God is righteous in all the works which he does, though we have not obeyed his voice. And now, O Lord our God, who brought your people out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand and made yourself a name, as it is this day, we have sinned and we have done wickedly. O Lord, according to all your righteousness, I pray, let your anger and your fury be turned away from your city, Jerusalem, your holy mountain, because of our sins and for the iniquity of our fathers. Jerusalem and your people are a reproach to all those around us. Now, therefore, our God, hear the prayer of your servant and his supplication, and for the Lord's sake, cause your face to shine on your sanctuary, which is desolate. O my God, incline your ear and hear. Open your eyes and see what our desolation and the city which is called your name. For we do not present our supplications before you because of our righteous deeds, but because of your great mercies. O Lord, hear. O Lord, forgive. O Lord, listen and act. Do not delay for your own sake. My God, your city and your people are called by your name. That's where we need to be. Daniel understood because he was in the Word. Daniel went straight to praying like this with his heart pouring out for everybody, with an acknowledgement of his sin, with the acknowledgement of the sin, and he's including himself in this. He doesn't say, for the sin of my people and my country who murdered the prophets, those horrid, wicked people. He said, our sin. We have sinned. And while there's nothing bad said about Daniel, he knows he's still a sinful man. He was not perfect. But he also knows himself to be a part of the people of Jesus Christ, or of Messiah. So we know him as Jesus Christ, but he knows himself to be a person of that person, of the nation that God set up to be an example to the whole world, and instead became a reproach to the whole world. I'm going to tell you guys, as a kid, brought up in a patriotic home, 2 grandfathers fought in World War II, uncles that fought in Korea and Vietnam. My wife does our family tree. I think I've had somebody fighting in every single war this country's ever fought. Family members that came in from Plymouth. Raised up to be a proud American. Respect the flag. Respect the president, even if you don't agree with him. Respect the office. Be a good citizen. We used to have lessons in school that talked about citizenship. Now you have teachers in school that tell you how to behave any way you want. Just act. Don't think. Just go with your emotions. And look at what we have. It shouldn't surprise anybody. And the reality of it is, we've become a reproach to the entire world. Well, this is written specifically about Israel. It applies to us too. The same mentality, the same sentiment. We can pray for our nation this way. Not anymore, man. We got to stop acting like we're the good guys. We are in the hole that we're in because God has put us there because He had to. We made Him. This is what happens to a nation who dismisses God. He doesn't really go away. He just lets the judgment begin to come. And honestly, I don't think the church has any business complaining about the candidates we have for president right now because we have not been in this posture in a long time. And it is not just the politicians' fault. It is the spiritual leaders of this nation. It's their fault. We let things happen without saying anything. We didn't give enough warning. And when we were threatened because we were warning, we shut our mouths. And I love the church, and that is my identity, is the church in the name of Jesus. My identity, I am less and less identifying with America and being an American. I still love my country. I would still fight for my country. I spent 8 years in the military. My brothers, all but one, have been in the military. Sisters, in-laws, we're a military family. The closer we get to the end, the more we need to identify with the church. And not in a Catholic way where you got to go to the church and you got to be the church and the church is your God and the church is who you worship and the church, not that. We're the church, the bride of Christ. We have been set here, just like Israel was, to be a light to the world. We're going to see next week, our day is going to end soon. Just like Daniel could look back at Jeremiah in the prophets and see that the time was coming for Israel to be set back up, for Israel to be restored and rebuilt. When he could look back and see that, and in desperation to make, I don't know if it's to make sure that it would happen, but to be so excited about that, to basically, this prayer, list out their sins, but say, you're the God of mercy. We don't deserve this. But you are the God of mercy. Righteousness belongs to you. Mercy belongs to you. Forgiveness belongs to you. I think the church needs to remember that. Not just does condemnation not belong to us and judgment belongs to God, but mercy and forgiveness, it all belongs to Him. And He will give it to whom He will give it to, and He will hold it back from whom He will hold it back. And it is not our place to decide who gets to hear and who doesn't. Our place as the bride of Christ is to be the example. Because our time is just about done. And Israel will then pick it back up. That last 7 years of tribulation in Revelation belongs to Israel. It is their last week of years that we'll talk about next week. That last week that is determined for them. When the 144,000 witnesses will be the voice of God. So the church has not replaced Israel. But God, because they have still rejected Him, has set them off. He's maintained them. He protects them. They're still established. They've been reestablished, actually. Just like He said He would. But He's had us here with a mission in this time. And the church has had great periods of time of revival that bring harvest, and they've had horrible periods of time with silence or with getting caught up in the ways of the world and thinking that they have the power. We've been in one of those times. Guys, we need to pray that we're at the end of one of those times right before we go home. And I think the church will be divided. The parable of the 10 virgins again. The church of Philadelphia and the church of Laodicea. One will not be given over to the judgment. The other one won't even know that there's anything wrong with them until they enter into the judgment. One to be lifted up, one to be vomited out. Listen, we need to be praying that our heart changes for this world. Our mission is not done until we hear the final horn, the final trumpet. Until He calls our name, our mission is not done. We cannot be just laying around asleep doing nothing. We need to get up. We need to move forward. I've got some statistics here from camp, actually, from a couple of different speakers that I've already shared last Sunday night and shared Wednesday night. I'm going to share them again. In a world of 7.5 billion people, 60 to 65% of those are made up of 35 and younger. 2.2 billion identify themselves as Christians. 75 million identify themselves as evangelical Christians. Now, in that evangelical number are a number of men that we would not want to follow, that we would say are false teachers. But still, 75 million, that would be, this church would fall under that number. In all that, there's still 6,000 people groups that have not heard the Bible in their own language. 6,000 that haven't heard yet in their own language. Secularism has become the big enemy in the church, in society. One of them shared this quote, God made man in His image, and man has returned the favor. 80% of 30 years old and younger see nothing wrong with gay marriage. %90 of Christians have never led a person to Christ. 90% have never led. Now, I'm going to qualify that a little bit. That doesn't mean that 90% have never shared the gospel. But 90% have never led anybody to the Lord. One of the speakers made this quote: "We are called by God, we are sent by God to invest our lives in something bigger than ourselves, building His kingdom." That is more important. The commission that we've been given is more important than anything else we're doing. There's a window. I always forget what it is. But the missionaries use, and it describes that area where it stretches across Africa and Europe and Asia, where 97% of the people who have not been evangelized yet all live in that little window, that 1040 window or something like that, they call it. It has to do with the longitude and latitude lines. But they came up with this window, a 414 window. 80% of the people that come to Jesus are ages 4 to 14 years old. Today. 80% of the people that come to Jesus are between the ages of 4 and 14. I fall into that window. I'm looking out here, and I don't know about all of you guys, but the ones that I see, not everybody falls into that window. When I first started doing youth ministry, it was 85% of the people that come to the Lord do it before the ages of 18. You see how the age has dropped? In those years where what you believe is formed, we should not think that they're safe because they're between the ages of 4 and 14. The world is targeting that same age group. The world systems target that same age group. They're telling our kids in kindergarten and first grade that gay marriage is okay. Not just that it's okay. But you might be. 10 years ago or so, maybe not even that long, it was, if you've ever had a thought about another person of the same sex, you might be gay, and that's okay. Now it's, you don't know unless you try. That's the message they're giving to our kids about that. That mom and dad don't really know anything. It's okay for you to make your own future. You don't have to listen to that. Don't be fooled by that, whatever it is. That the church is foolish, believes in myths. They're targeting our kids. They have been for a long time. But God targets the same age group. We don't have a lot of kids here. That didn't used to be the norm. Used to be you go into a church that was a small church, and they'd have half or more of their congregation would be the little kids, and the other half would be the parents that brought them, because they were bringing neighbor kids. They weren't just bringing their own. And in the last 10 years, I've watched that reverse itself. And small churches are full of more adults than they are little kids. I think that's a direct correlation to the breakdown of the family. There's a lot of little kids in this neighborhood. And I've balked at the idea of having vacation Bible school or anything, because how do you do that in this building? In a stone and cement parking lot? How do you do it? And who's going to come and help? I probably don't have a problem with that. Usually if I say there's something needs to be done, we go and do it. And you all show up and have fun doing it. But for the last 2 years when we've gone to this camp, I've gone to my daughter's morning service with her age group, Emma's age group. There's a whole bunch of them little kids. 500 of them. Split into 3 or 4 different age groups. And hers is the oldest. When she's done with this group, she goes into junior high. And I sit there and they do kind of the video thing for them and everything. They don't have anybody there playing the guitar. They do music on the video and have the words come up for them and all. They have fun. They do their sign deals for all the songs. In 2 years now, they've had a different song, but each year the song starts, I'm going, I know this song, and I don't really care for it. Why are we teaching the kids this song? And then you watch these little kids get into this song, and they start doing their hand motions and everything else, and I start bawling because I'm like, you're an idiot. What are you doing? There's nothing wrong with the song. You just don't like it. But look at what the kids do when they aren't afraid. When they're afraid to worship. When they think, this is worshiping God. I can raise my hands. Little kids. They get really loud. They shout. You can hear them from where our trailer is. You should see them on the night when they have their own night and they get to get up in front of that tabernacle full of people. 2,000 or more people. You get 500 kids on the stage, all waiting for their time to do their thing. And they don't always know all the words, but man, the words they know are loud and clear. And they have a blast. And then you sit and you listen, you hear some of the older folks that talk about, I got saved right down there. And I got saved over here because I was in a kids program. I don't want to neglect any age group. We've got a good spread of age groups here. Small as we are. We've got them from newborn up to retired. I think Mrs. Hunt is in her 80s. And I don't want to neglect anybody. And when I shared this last Sunday, Josh was here, and I appreciate what Josh and Carrie are doing. I appreciate what Hope and Matt are doing. But you guys, I'm praying for somebody with a real passion for them kids to get in here. To get them stirred up. So much that, maybe you got to stand up. I don't know. They'll fill this whole place up. So much that praise and worship time will have blips in it where it's really loud because it's the only words they know. When I heard that story about the 414 window, I had gone to a vacation Bible school, probably at 5 or 6 at my grandparents' church. And it was where my mom grew up, but she wasn't going. My dad didn't go. We went to vacation Bible school there that summer. And they had a big program at the end where all the parents could come and listen to us sing our songs and do our things. And I remember at the end of that, being in the car with my dad, I think waiting for my mom to get the other kids together or whatever, but standing in the front seat because we didn't have seat belts or car seats then. I was standing in the front seat by my dad. My grandma talking to us through the window. So you got to get your dad to come on Sunday. Yeah, if this is what Sunday's like, yeah, let's go. This is what church is like all the time. And we started going after that. And I don't know when he met with the pastor and prayed, but I know a couple years later, in that same church, at that altar, is where I went with my grandfather and my father, leading me to the Lord. Because I went to a vacation Bible school, because my grandma said, bring your parents. I think we got to go back to that. We have to get to the kids and have them bring their parents. If we can get to the parents and have them bring their kids, that's great too. Whatever. But it's not going to start unless we have a revival. And I don't mean have to meet every night of the week for 2 weeks and have, that's not what I'm talking about. If we don't get on our knees, if we don't do what Jesus called us to do, you know, his disciples, man, held the kids back. He called them holding them back, and he got torqued. When it says he rebuked the disciples, it's actually pretty strong language in the Greek. Like, as angry as when he cleansed the temple. Don't keep the kids away from me. You bring them to me. We need to bring the kids to Jesus. We need to bring everybody, our friends, our family, everybody. And if you guys are praying any other way, then you're praying against your pastor, because that's how I'm praying. It's time to wake up. It's time to get busy. We can like all this specific prophecy stuff. That's awesome. I love doing this stuff. I love the Bible. I love the Word. But it's not for you guys to just come and sit here and feel good for a little while. Get out the door and get to work. Call me and say, Pastor, I got too many kids. I can't get them all in my car. We'll get people out to get the kids. Yeah. Talk to them. Sing to them. Your kids, neighbor kids, make your house the place where all the kids want to come. There'll be peace in your home for the kids because they don't have it in their homes. It's not just about being the cool parents, man. If you're peaceful in your home, they'll want to be there. And tell them about Jesus. Don't be afraid to pray because your kids have friends over. Pray over the meal. Pray over all of it. Pray over them. Get a list of your kids' friends and pray for every one of them friends, especially the ones you don't like. All right, now I've gone really long. Let's pray. Lord, I just pray that I didn't speak out of turn, but everything was from you. Lord, show us how to reach the lost. Whether it's going out to find them or whether you just bring them to the door. Speak through us, Lord. Love through us. We want to be your servants. Lord, I pray for those who have children or grandchildren that you would give them just supernatural love and wisdom of how to reach out to them and how to speak to them, how to draw them in. Lord, I pray we would begin to see whole families saved, whole families giving their heart to you. Lord, that we would see a community begin to change because of a revival in the churches. And I pray that our homes will be places of peace and refuge for other people, for kids, for adults alike. Lord, that this place would become a place of healing from addiction, from hurt and pain. From fear. Lord, give us wisdom to know how to use this building to glorify you the most. Or Lord, if you have for us to move to another building, then just open the doors and take us there. Or whatever your will is in it, Lord. Show us what to do. And Lord, I pray that this would become a body that would be one that responds to you and hears from you, just like Peter said from the prophet Joel, that we would know that this is the last days, that we would know that and begin to hear from you, and that we would see visions and dream dreams. And that we would see things happen that only happen by your hand. And that all praise and honor and glory would go to you for that. In Jesus' name, amen.